Stop talking about slavery. It was so long ago. America's not a racist country. Let's make Juneteenth about diversity. I feel guilty about what my ancestors did, but I refuse to be an anti-racist. So can you please stop talking about racism? Can you just stop talking about black slavery in America? Please!
Guys, that is what the voice of white privilege, of what those who want to whitewash and black out the history of black slavery in America wants to do. It wants to change the subject. It wants to make Juneteenth something that it is not. So I want to wish you all a happy Juneteenth. I want to say that I'm happy that you're here with me today. Let's talk about Juneteenth. I want to know how you guys are going to celebrate your Juneteenth. Let me know in the comments. If you are a foreign person, if you're not an American, and you landed on my channel, say you're in Europe or Africa or Asia or the South America, and you don't know much about Juneteenth, I would like to tell you a little bit about it. So it is definitely an African American holiday. It's much like Kwanzaa, except unlike Kwanzaa, Juneteenth is to commemorate the day that slaves were freed. Now, Juneteenth is a combination of the word June and 19th, okay? And the actual date of Juneteenth was on June 19th, 1865. And it's really funny because that came actually 2 years after the decree from Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, that slaves in the United States were actually free. So in most historical contexts that you look at, it'll say, oh, well, you know, transportation was much slower back then. So when General Gordon Granger, the guy who actually delivered this news to Galveston, Texas, came from the Union down into the Confederate States in the South to let people know everywhere that, hey, black people in the U.S. are free. Lots of historical references say, oh, it's because the limited availability of fast-paced transport back then. But we can also go ahead and imagine that a lot of people, landowners, slave owners, plantation and crop field owners, they were really, really upset about the prospect of using their cash cows, i.e. black people, black slaves in the United States. And it's something that even today, those traces of white supremacy and racism continue to stay alive because oftentimes those far-right personalities in the U.S. do not want to recognize Juneteenth for what it is. They see it as something that makes them uncomfortable, but it's something that needs to be talked about. And in 2021, Joe Biden signed it into law that Juneteenth would be recognized, nationally as a national holiday, I can imagine back when MLK Day was enacted as a national holiday, the far extreme right probably had a lot of backlash. That's just what happens with progress. The creepy crawlies, the darks will just always, we don't want progress. We don't want all of that. But it all eventually comes to light. So now that Juneteenth has been signed into law, you actually see right now those same traces of white supremacy and inability for that persona of white privilege and white fragility to accept the truth. And so that's why you see many people trying to turn Juneteenth into a diversity day, or you see advertisements for Juneteenth as marketing ploys featuring only white people in the ads. It's something just like Gay Pride or MLK Day or Kwanzaa, whatever you might want to think of, where marketers just try to take something that's very close to the hearts of marginalized people, flip it on its head, and turn it into something that is commodified. That is what America is so famous for doing. But America is also famous for extreme advocacy. So I want to take this moment not only to recognize those in the United States who are descendants of those ancestors, our wonderful ancestors who put forth so much sacrifice. I mean, just talking about this makes me want to tear up. And, oftentimes white people, the soul of white supremacy wants to silence black people from talking about slavery and also talking about our African roots that came before slavery. It comes with an entire history of whitewashing, continuing to try to vilify, to dehumanize black individuals. But it is not just those black individuals that America has enslaved. And it may be some other name historically, but I do want to take this time, although Juneteenth is celebrated by black descendants in the United States, and I want to make this day special for us, I also want to acknowledge those Native individuals of U.S. overseas territories like Hawaii and Puerto Rico and Alaska, who oftentimes similar to black people, much less on a much less massive scale, but equally grotesque scale of completely taking away people's rights, taking away people's will to live, taking away people's land, and this barbarianism that has cost so many their lives. I want to go ahead and acknowledge you guys as well. I hope that you guys will celebrate Juneteenth with us. How will I be celebrating Juneteenth? Well, I'll probably be celebrating it with my white husband, who is Portuguese. For those of you who don't know, Portugal was one of the first to spearhead the transatlantic slave trade. Oftentimes, my awesome woke husband and I will kind of laugh and commiserate over the fact that our ancestors probably would have been really, really surprised at our union and that I'm in our union voluntarily. Because oftentimes when you saw Portuguese and black people together in the past, it definitely would not have been voluntarily most of the time. But, I did get one of the woke ones, and I'm lucky enough for that he is open to learning about his privilege and respecting that and delving in not further just into his own European ancestry and history, but that of black folks and how it affects us today. So, it's like me growing up with my mom. I often would have these conversations about racism and the traces of slavery and the aftermath of slavery in today's age with my mom growing up. And I would say, I don't want to talk about this. I would say, the world's much better now, Mom. Like, why do we have to talk about this all the time? I can say now, as a 31-year-old woman, I'm so thankful for my mom having those conversations with me. And, my husband and his re-education, I take real pride. I'll share this with you. I take great pride in the fact that I'm married with someone who, when we started dating, he had his own business, he owned 2 vehicles, he was really successful in his career, and he was completely self-educated. He did not have a university degree, which was overwhelmingly flabbergasting to me since I do have 2 degrees myself and attended 3 higher education universities. I just didn't see how anyone could really do that. And as we got to know each other further, I realized that, wow, this person has really taken it upon himself to nourish himself with knowledge. And he oftentimes, in the beginning, would show great proclivity to eventually one day going back to school, and he still does. And I talked to my mom about that. I said, I can't believe that he doesn't have a university degree. But I told my mom, he does show interest in doing that one day. And I said, I was really confused why he didn't take the initiative when he was younger. And you know what my mom said? You said, well, he didn't have you. So now when he does go to university, he's got that lens of anti-racism to take with him. Because oftentimes, history tries to rewrite itself. It tries to whitewash itself. So I'm really hopeful for that. One day when my white husband goes back to school, he actually will have maybe be in a place where he would not have been at younger years because of his black wife, and maybe he'll look at the information in a different way. as someone who studied art history, as I've said many times on other videos, Eastern art was oftentimes just lumped together. Africa was usually just considered by the art history world as simply Egypt and Egypt alone. And we can link that with Egypt's alliances with Europe and Greece and Rome. And the rest of Africa would essentially be forgotten and labeled as, barbarians in dirt huts, squalling in their own feces. But we know now that Africa was so much more than that. Black Americans, I hope that Black Americans do take the opportunity to realize how rich their heritages are. I'm reminded of a recent event that I went to for church. I live in Europe, for those of you guys who don't know, and I'm surrounded by many, many, many Africans and people of African descent, from people from Ivory Coast and Haiti and Cameroon, from Mali, from Senegal. And we often will have these conversations where, although we are separated by oceans and seas, at least in our upbringings, we still have all of these deep roots in our heritage. I know from my family researching our distant heritage through DNA, our traditions weren't passed down orally because we got cut off from our African origins, us as African American people, when we traveled to the U.S. And if I wasn't clear, I am American, but I live in Europe. When us Black Americans got cut off from our heritage, unlike my friends here who are from those African countries, I can't really tell you my history because my African family passed it down to me. I can only tell it to you because we did, research, and that's okay. There was a fracture in our history, but we still can do that research. I'm so thankful for my family. Juneteenth has just become a national holiday, but luckily I've known about it, for a very long time because my family did instill that education in me. I hope that young Black people everywhere will continue to educate themselves and pass that education, that faith, that spirituality, and the heritage of their African ancestors down to their children. So many times history has tried to eviscerate that when it does not do the same for European heritages or Jewish or Asian, and points of revolution or history where there has quite literally been change, and where there's been rebellion against slavery. History oftentimes does not try to rewrite it. But oftentimes with Black folks, it seems like, hey, we don't want to talk about this. Let's not judge each other for what our 2 generations ago did. Let's not talk about it. Why with people who are Black can we not talk about it? So, Juneteenth is not a diversity holiday. It is not a commodity. It's something very, very real. And I pray every day that the sacrifice that my ancestors made for me to be here talking to you today will be validated, and that justice will continue to prevail. So how will I spend Juneteenth? Well, I won't really be partying this year. I know some of you might be spending Juneteenth sipping those, Jello shots and dancing, and all the power to you. I will probably just be spending Juneteenth with my husband, binging on Netflix, but it certainly will be content that shows Black excellence and Black heritage, Black resilience. And I hope that you all will continue to educate yourself and take pride in this history as well, including white people, including all peoples. History is something that you can't really bury it. But guys, I would really love to know what you think. How are you spending Juneteenth? Please feel free to let me know in the comments. And if you're new here, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, hit the bell so you know whenever I post a video, and I'll see you next time.